Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Modern Mondays here at Guardian Games in Portland, Oregon. We are Portland Paper, and it has been too long. This is Urchin Kali here, and I am commentating with.
Devin Straub, also known as Arbitrary Armor sometimes.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to start off round one with a matchup between uh, Nick Beekert and Tim Chan. That's going to be Izzet Delver versus Naya Midrange. Looks like we have that flipped here, so we're going to take care of that. Devin, why don't you give us your thoughts on this matchup? We get going.
Yeah, so without seeing the exact cards in Naya midrange, it looks like we have the decks flipped here. But without seeing the exact cards, it's hard to say. There's a lot of playable cards in the archetype, so it's really going to come down to Nick's card choices here.
All right. So what do you think in general about what we might see here?
I imagine it's going to be just a matter of if the Naya midrange player can keep enough threats on the board. Looks like we're going to have some early fetch lands, a Delver of Secrets on the left. But it's really just going to be a matter of if the Izzet Delver deck can pressure the Naya midrange deck before the oversized green creatures outpace the red burn spells.
All right. So it looks like we've got a Delver quickly meets Path to Exile.
Pardon me, guys.
Should you go ahead and let us know what's happening in that match?
So yeah, it looks like a Delver meets a Path to Exile, so the Naya player keeping the battlefield clear and keeping life total high makes sense against a bunch of red spells. Although it looks like the Izzet Delver player is going to have a pretty big mana advantage as a result.
Indeed, yeah. You don't really want to give those tempo decks the extra edge there just because usually those games are games of edges. The tempo decks want to do just enough, and letting them have the extra mana to play their really cheap spells is going to let them outpace you, which is exactly what they want. So Path to Exile, not your ideal removal spell against a Delver deck.
Especially against the turn 1 or turn 2 Delver.
Oh yeah, you'd much rather have, Lightning Bolt or even Lightning Bolt, push, anything but Path, really.
But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. There isn't a ton of super playable life gain in the format right now for Naya.
That's what you think.
I should say. I can't imagine that the Naya player has a boundless source of life, so his life is certainly a resource in this matchup. Fiery Justice. Ooh. Bam. I mean, technically it is a life gain spell. You are right.
All right, looks like Tim Chan here gonna run out of Ren and 6. Never a bad thing to have. Gonna start generating some card advantage against
Yeah,
a
sometimes
deck
you
with
just
a
got to
lot.
go ahead and, looks like you got Force of Negation there. You just got to jam sometimes. Run him out of counter spells. Something's going to get countered by that Force of Negation eventually, so might as well be now.
All right, look, we've got a Bloodbraid Elf, and that Cascade cast trigger gonna flip over not a Chandra, but a
Ooh.
Voice of Resurgence.
Bloodbraid Elf in particular, very good card against counterspells. Some guaranteed 2-for-1 value there.
Absolutely. Usually, when you're trying to do those 1-for-1 exchanges, having something like a Bloodbraid Elf, also Voice of Resurgence, a lot of these cards in Tim's deck are generating that kind of advantage, which is usually something you struggle with in green and white. Red has a little more card selection in the form of like rummage effects, but green and white, not the colors of card advantage.
It's definitely true. White is not very good at drawing cards. It looks like the Bloodbraid Elf is going to connect, sending the Izzet Delver player down to 13. And while the Naya deck has few ways to gain life, the Izzet Delver deck has almost 0. So every single piece of chip damage that the Naya midrange deck can get in is going to be quite valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, you want to see a Delver deck that's just staying a little bit ahead on board or in life total, and this is just not where you want to be. Because Nick is playing with a lot of counter magic, a little bit of spot removal, but mostly counter magic. And so once Tim has board presence, unless Nick's going to be able to answer that, it's going to be a tough time for him. I think this is looking...
Yeah, the Izzet Delver deck definitely has a hard time catching up from behind.
Yeah, usually tempo strategies in general are great when they stay ahead. So here's a Vivian Arcbow Ranger, I believe.
Vivian, I believe
Champion
that's a
of.
different one, yeah.
All right. Well, either way, it is going to meet with a Snapcaster Mage flashing back a Mana Leak, so it's going to stay off the table.
And importantly, this 2/1 threatens to trade with this 3/2, and it kind of equalizes the battlefield a little bit.
Speaking of 2-for-1s, here's a Bolt for Snapcaster Mage. Nick Beaker looking at Archmage's Charm, Spell Snare, and Brazen Borrower. In hand, Archmage's Charm going to be a way to pull back ahead on cards, but this Bolt is so important to maintain board position, I think we're going to see a counterspell.
Yeah, because
Oh,
if you let
actually
this...
he's going to draw 2 in response, see what else he can find. There's another Snapcaster Mage, but no 1-mana counter available. But he can ambush block this Bloodbraid Elf. And with the Borrower, he can get back in the game.
He could also just take the 3 here and then deploy the Snapcaster next turn, get a little bit more value, which looks like is what he's going for.
I do not believe we have a bot available, chat, to bring up cards. And unfortunately, you've got me doing production tonight. So card picker's a little bit too advanced. We'll get there another week, but I'm pushing the buttons. So everything goes wrong. You can blame me. All right. Gonna take a peek at the top. How many cards is it?
3 cards.
Top 3 cards. Looking for a creature, or at least a card to tuck away. You can always bluff it. But you can only cast it from under Vivian if it's a creature card.
Definitely true.
Ooh, bounce your Vivian. Strand that card in exile. Unless we can cast it right now.
Seems a lot better than bouncing this Bloodbraid, that's for sure.
Whew, yeah.
Yeah, importantly, even if the Vivian leaves the battlefield, you can still cast the exiled card.
I did not know that.
So it works pretty well in the face of spot removal.
Actually, it's interesting to see Tim has constructed this deck with a great eye towards card advantage. Like he's leveraged Bloodbraid Elf as well as this Vivian to dig up more threats from his library. And speaking of threats from his library,
it looks like we're gonna have a bit of a stack war here with Tim responding to the Brazen Borrower's petty theft by flashing in Tarmogoyf. But then it looks like Nick is going to respond with a Spell Snare of his own.
He's been sitting on it.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's going to also fetch a Mystic Sanctuary, get back that charm. So a pretty solid turn for Nick, even though Tim's about to Nick is about to untap. So that was a really good turn for Nick. Let's see what he does on this turn.
I am a big fan of Mystic Sanctuary and Archmage's Charm. It just, you pull so far ahead. All right, Nick gonna cast a Serum Visions here. Smooth that draw out, see if he can
get rid of that land.
Going.
And a young Pyromancer the draw here, which threatens to gum up the ground quite quickly. So if Nick can just play this and hold up Archmage's Charm, I have to imagine he's feeling pretty good about his position.
Yeah, I wonder if you... Yeah, with the Snapcaster in hand, I think you just chump the Bloodbraid Elf and... Yeah, you cast a spell, you chump the Bloodbraid Elf, you ambush block, you block with a Snapcaster later, just because you need some way to stay ahead on board.
Actually, this turn's really tough. I actually think the right play might just be to trade.
I don't know.
Because ideally you really want to keep up that counterspell for whatever Nick plays, or excuse me, for whatever Tim plays this turn.
That's fair. Yeah, exactly. That's gone. And now you still got the Brazen Borrower available, and Tim is hellbent here. So...
Whereas Nick still has that Snapcaster looming, threatening to do something good. And he drew another Snapcaster.
It's pretty good. He can flash in Borrower end of turn, which is going to be a decent clock. Coming in for 1. That's going to be...
I imagine he's just going to tart.
Yeah. Flash that back until end of turn. Kill that Hierarch.
So he's sitting on this charm. Very smart play. No need to flash that back right away.
End step. Gonna draw 2. Never bad. And welcome to everybody in chat, by the way. It's been a couple of weeks. It is really good to see all of you again.
Thank you guys so much for joining us here.
All right, Nick gonna untap. Finds another land. He's got Force Snap.
Ooh, Tireless Tracker, a nice draw.
Another.
Probably demands a counterspell.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna hit the board. Bird of Paradise, not as threatening.
Not as threatening indeed.
Ooh.
Gonna see a path here.
Brazen Borrower, we're gonna get pathed.
So a bunch of cards being traded here.
This is the Battle of the Dorks, but this is what it comes down to, especially with Delver style decks. It's all the little edges, all the Snapcaster beats.
These games are often quite close.
You know, you think maybe not. I don't know. The Naya midrange build is seems like a pretty cool brew. I'm not familiar with this archetype, but it's really well constructed as far as I can tell.
Knight of the Reliquary, the play here.
Oh, he's a fat boy.
Talk about a blast from the past.
Well, he's come and gone.
Snapcaster Charm here,
Gonna get an elemental
pulling even further ahead on board.
just by inches and one-ones. Bam, 5.
However, Nick is down to nothing but a Force of Negation and a land in hand, so if Tim can produce another creature, which he does, as the Naya decks are quite good at doing.
Yeah, Tim's still at 9, so he's gonna need something else to get around this Tarmogoyf. He can't just swing in. There's a Delver.
Delver might do it.
Well, he's got to flip it. And now...
Because now, if you're in Tim's seat, you have an interesting decision. If you swing, you kill that 1/1, but it might open you up to a pretty big crackback. So
Yeah,
I have to imagine you got to play it safe.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Neither of these
Deprive
players...
is a very good one.
There we go. Delver flips. This is one of those really big brain plays. I know Nick, and I know he's a very good player. He always flips his Delvers on the first. If you're going to play a Delver deck, I highly recommend keeping that in mind.
See, that's what separates the good players from the great players. They know it's there.
And we're going to see another
Deprive,
Tarmogoyf
pick
Heats.
up my Sanctuary.
It is the baby Cryptic Lock.
And that's going to be good enough for Tim as we move on to game 2 here.
Yeah, you really saw that almost looking like it was over for Nick, but he stuck it out, hung in the game, and here we are. So, Devin, you want to give us an idea of what these players are working with in their sideboards?
Yeah, definitely. So it looks like on Nick's side, we have 2 copies of Abrade, 2 copies of Thing in the Ice, 2 copies of Blood Moon, 1 Flame Slash, 2 Disdainful Strokes, 2 Dragon's Claws, 1 Saheeli Sublime Artificer, 1 Dismember, and 2 Mystical Disputes.
So, I think I might be in for just some of the little removal here. Or
Yeah.
do you like Thing in the Ice?
Thing in the Ice can be good. Tim displayed that he had several Path to Exile, so that's a little bit worse, but it's always nice to overload their removal. I could see some people boarding it in and some people not wanting to because it's kind of awkward against things like Bloodbraid Elf.
I don't hate Dismember.
Dismember can be nice. There's a lot of pretty threatening creatures early on that you want to keep off the battlefield.
Knight of the
Especially
Reliquary, Tireless Tracker, those gotta go.
Tarmogoyf.
Tarmogoyf, yeah, you gotta get that off the board.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's an argument for a braid. I don't know that Blood Moon is where you want to be right now.
Yeah, against the Birds of Paradise deck, it's at its weakest.
Yeah.
Also, the deck naturally wants to play red, so it really only shuts off green and white.
Yeah.
I do like the Flame Slash for similar reasons to Dismember. I also like the Saheeli because a stream of chump blockers is pretty nice, and not dying to Bolt or Path is a nice upside. But other than that, not a ton that I'm super interested in here.
All right, let's take a look at Tim's options.
So it looks like Tim is working with 2 Surgical Extractions, 1 Eidolon of Rhetoric, 2 Weather the Storm, 2 Force of Vigor, 2 Collector Oath, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Blood Moon, 1 Damping Sphere, 1 Chandra Torch of Defiance, and 1 Winds of Abandon.
All right, let's give it. I actually want to step back here just a second. Looks like Nick brought out a Deprive, 1 Young Pyromancer, and I maybe missed the other one. I think it might have been an Archmage's Charm in favor of, you were right, the Flame Slash, the Dismember. And he had also brought in the Saheeli, I think, for a source of chump blockers that's harder to kill than Young Pyromancer. But back to Tim's sideboard. What do you like against Izzet Delver?
I definitely like the Eidolon. It shuts off things like Snapcaster. It's kind of annoying to kill, and it can really just throw a wrench in the blue-red player's tempo. It is pretty bad if you get behind because then you lock yourself out. But if you're on the play game too, I think it's a consideration. I also kind of like the Chandra as just a way to pick off a creature or just a threat that's hard to kill.
It's also just a little harder to interact with, I think.
It's definitely true, especially if your opponent has a bunch of creature removal like Flame Slash and Dismember. And lastly, I think that's just about it. I can't see much else that I even like. Maybe Surgicals, but that card's historically not been good enough versus Snapcaster.
It's definitely not good enough in a deck that's not playing key spells. Because, you know, if you take all of Nick's Lightning Bolts, Still has a completely valid game plan.
That's
You know, the
true.
best thing you're going to do is deny a sanctuary trigger from working once. But that's not where you want to be with
Shutting
the
off a
surgical.
Snapcaster is also often worth a card.
Yeah, but I don't know if you want to be so off plan for that.
Yeah, there's only so many of that kind of effect you can afford to have. It's only so many non-creature spells, really.
All right. Both players going to keep 7 here. Tim on the play.
Good to
Going to
hear.
run out a Stomping Grounds tapped and pass the turn. Yeah, I like the Deprived Sanctuary play. Obviously, it's even better with Cryptic because you don't lock yourself out as much, and it's better earlier. Um, but only really the decks with Emery are able to do the every turn counter a spell. Um, looks like Nick's got the turn 1 Delver.
If he's a true Delver player, we know what's going to happen this turn.
Let's see it. Show me, Nick. Oh,
Oh,
what a punt. Voice of Resurgence hitting the board for Tim. Right now, not that threatening unless Nick can't remove it, in which case his counter spells get pretty
forcing
sad.
Nick to do his things on his own turn is pretty strong.
Gonna main phase that up. No red source. Oh, he does have a red source available. Did
So
not play it up this
perhaps
turn.
should have.
Should have maybe held the land drop.
Yeah, we've
There's
all been
voice.
there. It happens to us all.
Oh, yeah. So many times. You don't play your land, something gets stubborn and denied. Real embarrassed. All right. Tim's turn 3.
Stoneforge Mystic.
Woohoo! What do we got in the toolbox today?
I imagine a skull that batters.
One big life linky germ.
Ooh, looks like a Sword of Fire and Ice. Pretty good against the blue and red
Even
deck.
better! I was about to say, I think we could do better than a Batter Skull. Usually Stoneforge Mystic decks, as it turns out, you know, Batter Skull is this nice catch-all, but most of the time you want to get a sword. Like, card advantage is really important. And if you're picking a sword that's tailored to the matchup, then it's really good.
hmm Looks like a fetch shock here to keep the island count high for the potential Mystic Sanctuaries.
Yeah, you have to construct your land bases a little bit carefully for that card, but it's not that difficult. All right. Stoneforge Mystic meets Lightning Bolt. Attack with
Unfortunately,
Delver also meets Lightning Bolt.
what year is this?
The year of our Lord. Would you believe me if I said it was 2020, Lightning Bolt is bad, and Simic is good? I like that we're living in a little
That's a hard
bubble where
one.
that's not true. Just like there's I don't know. I mean, it's not quite as bad as like when Hogak Summer was happening here, and there was a little bit of like personal shaming. Not super bad. You're like, you have to play the good deck. I get it, but there's just a little bit.
You're the super villain of the shop.
You're just like, I get it. You have no integrity. I respect it, but you have no integrity. But it's a little bit like that now with Oko. Like I'll be playing with
Damn,
someone
that's
having
harsh.
having a good time, and then
So it looks
play
like
Oko, and they just.
looks like we have a Vivian here, exiling a card and threatening to down tick a second time.
Yeah, I also wish this was what every modern match looked like. It's
This is modern at its finest. This is
it's a
both
breath
players
of fresh
casting
air.
creatures and lightning bolts and planeswalkers that draw a card. It never ends.
Oh, it's so good. All these little edges.
Looks
Gonna
like
snap a
fetch.
Scalding Tarn.
Maybe getting a Mystic Sanctuary.
Yeah, that card's an island, turns out.
Sure is.
That's the
Ooh,
difference.
fetching a Steam Vents tapped. What double red actions are you going to go for?
We didn't see any double red cards out of his board.
The only thing I can think of is a Bolt Snap Bolt.
Yeah. Just gonna bolt. Yeah, I really prefer playing Oko online just so I don't have to look at my opponent's face.
I so I'm wondering why he fetched a sorcery speed and left up a basic island here.
I don't know. I'm not completely sure it was necessary, but Tim also gonna fetch here with a nice Onslaught Windswept Heath. Remember when we
A
first
man of
got
class. Alexander signed original Shocklands. He knows where it's at. We got some unglued basics too.
and when those Onslaught fetches were printed, little did we know.
OG Horizon canopies.
Why would you want to take a damage? I mean, I guess it's fixing, but
You gotta grow your Death Shadow.
Not a card. I know you don't remember. But here's sort of Fire and Ice equipped to Voice of Resurgence. Gonna get in there.
So yeah, this is looking pretty bad for Nick. Uh, Going down as low as 5 with a sword that threatens to connect for as much as 6 damage.
Yeah, that's not where you want to be. I think this may be over for Nick quite soon.
Yeah, there's very few cards that can get him out of this other than something like a Shatter for the sword, but the only card of that nature is perhaps a Brazen Borrower, bouncing the sword.
Yeah, that's not a great answer.
Not a great answer at all.
And we're going to need to see several things lined up. He does have a Force of Negation in hand, but I don't see another blue card. So if he can borrow or bounce the sword, he's still going to need another mana to take care of it, which
And
he does have.
So yeah, it looks like he wasn't able to find it, so we're moving to game 3.
Boop, boop, boop. Tied up here. Right. And I apologize, guys, for that clock. I can get it. So we've got about 23 minutes left in round here, so.
It looks like we got some people disagreeing on the fundamentals of having white bordered lightning bolts or not having white bordered lightning bolts.
It is one of my favorite traditions here on Portland Paper to criticize the aesthetics of people's card choices.
I mean, let's be real. You should always choose your lanes based on what other people think of you.
Do you ever choose your lands to tilt people?
Oh, absolutely. There was a time when I would run all 8th edition mountains, and each one would be different art.
You're a monster.
Gotta get them with the white border shocks, too.
Gross.
Then again, I was also
Absolutely
playing mono red, so.
Well.
All lightning bolts are beautiful. Exactly. Doesn't matter what kind of bolt, they all deal 3 damage. They're all the same.
Gross. You know, I realized when I had stuck in my closet, I don't really play lightning bolt, but on the other hand, I found this foil lightning bolt from a while back. It's a Chris Rush foil lightning bolt, like the promo ones, and it's really pretty. It almost makes you want to play bolt.
Those full art bolts would look really nice. The new ones are pretty cool too, but can't beat the originals.
Luke Kaplan, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Did you lose a bet?
You wouldn't understand, Urchin.
I did once sleeve up a deck with all white bordered islands. It was the blue tempo deck from Standard a little while back, just for a friend who was in love with white bordered islands. And I played it once, and then I immediately had to undo it. It's just like so awful.
I saw somebody with white bordered lion's eye diamonds once. You know, full on whiteout. Actually, I should say I saw somebody selling those. I can't imagine why, but because honestly, whenever you white border something that isn't white bordered, you're saying I own this for life.
You're a troll. You're also a huge troll. All right, Nick gonna start it off. Shaka Steam Vents, Casta Serum Visions.
Looks like.
Oh, that's really spicy. I want to know about this. Send me your list. Luke Kaplan, Field of the Dead over Urzi. Just to amulet, or you don't have to say if you don't want.
Looks like just some lands here and some cantrips.
All right, Tim, fetching up 8. Tapped, stomping grounds at a turn. Nick, lots of interaction available on turn 2. Potentially a mana leak. Potentially deprive if you really wanted to go for it, but I doubt it.
Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do.
I'm just not gonna. I don't know if I want to give you attention for that attack, Cowboy. And welcome back, Nuglow. I've missed you. All right, here's Tarmogoyf hitting the battlefield. Just a wee 2-3 at this point. Nick gonna end of turn cast an opt.
Pick up some cards. Looks like looks like he has a spell snare he opted not to use. Interesting. I feel like not many players would have gone for that.
Fear. Did you just draw the spell snare?
No, I don't believe so.
Crash in for 3 here. Nick gonna fall to 15.
And if Nick is trying to play around the Voice of Resurgence by slow rolling the spell snare, that's pretty heads up play there, and it looks like that might be what happens here.
Oh, I get you, Attack Cowboy. Things that were originally printed in whiteboard. You didn't go intentionally whiteboard your cards. I forgive you. Stoneforge Mystic eats a spell snare. There we go. Nick way ahead of us here.
And interestingly,
Well, if you notice, actually, saving the spell snare there allowed him to cast Young Pyromancer and then get a token, use all of his mana. So you know that sort of a tempo deck is doing well when they're using all of their mana. I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
It is mana efficiency, but I also think that Nick realized that thanks to this young Pyromancer, the the Stormgrowth isn't actually all that threatening, especially when compared to a Stoneforge, which can maybe get a Sword of Fire and Ice, or a Voice of Resurgence that it's quite bad for your counter spells.
Oh, here's Renin 6. Gonna hit the battlefield for Tim. And that's pretty bad. Young Pyromancer down. Only 2 jump blockers.
And Tarmogoyf playing defense here to keep the Renin 6 alive.
Yep. So you can see here why Nick probably wanted to bring in Saheeli. As a down tick, Renin 6 does not take a Saheeli down.
Saheeli quite resilient to damage-based removal.
Fairly, she comes in on 5, right?
Yeah, 5 loyalty, yeah.
5 and a down tick 2 to copy. Not something Nick is interested in.
Usually not.
He doesn't, I believe, run any artifacts. But just as a token maker that doesn't die to Renin 6, that's pretty good.
You can actually turn the servo tokens into hasty delvers.
Oh, that's not bad. Didn't think of that. So here's Nick gonna Mystic Sanctuary and a turn top Archmage's Charm, draw it for turn. And he's gonna now draw 2 cards.
Start digging for an answer. Does not find what he's looking for.
Uh-oh. That is one very threatening Lahergwaith.
So next position kind of falling apart here a little bit. He really needs to, because he's behind on board and he doesn't have much going on in his hand.
No.
So
he's got a lot of lands.
A lot of
He's
lands.
very much flooding out.
Gonna main phase opt here, try to find some action. Scribes to the bottom. Hopefully it's a good spell. Another land. So.
Ooh. No, this is barreling
It
towards
looks like he's got 4
disaster.
lands in his hand, so that's just about all but over here.
Yeah. Gonna take Renin 6 down to 1.
Trade a token for 1 damage.
Ugh. Fallen far, far behind here.
Yeah. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, these blue-red Delvers really don't have a way to dig out of a hole like this.
All right, Tim just looking for a way to close out. He doesn't know that Nick is totally empty-handed, but he's ahead, so he doesn't really have to act. Again, if you're ahead on board, you just don't have to push it until they react to you. Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. So here we see in his upkeep, Nick is snapping a fetch land, and in response, Tim flashed in off the Vivian an Aven Mind Sensor, which only lets Nick search the top 4 cards of his library, which is pretty nasty. Fortunately, yeah, as you say, for Nick, there is a land in there, so he is not strip mining himself. On the other hand, still flooding out. Still going to have to draw something good.
All right.
What do we get?
What is that?
A braid? I believe it's a...
It's a red spell, looks like.
It's a braid. All right, we're going to take Aven Mind Sensor out of this game. Kill... Oh, Renin 6 back down to 1. Fetch land, pass. Nick here, very much on a 2-turn clock. Gonna need something very good. Pretty much exactly Brazen Borrower.
And even then, you're still looking at a ton of damage from the plays he's gonna... Or you still have to undo all the card advantage that Tim is getting.
Oh, there's no undoing that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how you can survive a turn. And Tim right now, if you haven't noticed, keeps Renin 6 returning that Tranquil Thicket, which allows him to cycle draw an extra card every turn. So here's your... Ooh, Knight of the Reliquary. Speaking of card advantage, Knight of the Reliquary and Renin 6.
Pretty good combo.
Pretty not bad. Just absolutely barf all of the lands out of your deck.
Tim is making full use of his mana base.
Yeah. We got Field of Ruin and a 3-color deck. You love the
technically it's a 3-color fixer if you think about it. I mean,
You know, every time I take that attitude, I get bit real hard. He's got a pretty tight curve too, so I appreciate the bravery.
Archmage's Charm, not the worst draw, but he's gonna
Not
to
the
have some
best
pretty hot
draw.
ones here.
All right, here's Snapcaster Mage. That might be able to get us somewhere.
Um, yeah, but I think that Nick is just too far behind at this point.
Oh, I agree. It's not likely that this is gonna help. So the knight is a 3/3. If we can
Yeah,
snap bolt right now, but we can field in response, then that's not gonna work. Or crack canopy.
yeah, the knight can grow by +2/+2 pretty much whenever Tim wants to.
Uh-oh. Yeah, a fistful of options and not anything that's gonna matter. Gonna draw Snapcaster Mage. Flame slash Serum Visions on the top. Not enough to kill Tarmogoyf.
It's not gonna happen.
Ugh. Not like this. It's 2 snaps in hand, so we've got blocks, but
Yeah, 2 snaps means that Nick is might be able to survive this turn, but it's not looking like.
don't care. 2 life off the canopies just to get rid of your land. Not sure I would
Also
have
to
gone for the
shuffle away
Steam
that
Vents here.
Serum Visions.
Good point. When your opponent has stacked their deck. Yeah, that's gone. Is he going after the Sanctuary, I assume?
And
Or the Steam Vents? Snapcaster Mage. Gonna target Opt. So
So
that's gonna let Nick get another land, go up a mana, but this is just still not coming back. So this is an opt-in response to the field so we can get the
So
card off the top before the
yeah,
shuffle.
Nick's thinking if it's worth it to get the card described to the top or maybe go for a random one in hopes of finding something a little bit better.
So if you're Nick, what are your outs here?
I think it's Brazen Borrower or bust. Because at this point you're in the end step, so it has to be an instant, so that really limits what you can do.
All right, here we are.
Ooh, also
Let's
Field of Ruin
see
and
it.
Avid Mind Sensor. That's quite the combo.
Yeah, this deck is really sweet. I like what Tim's doing here. Here we go. What do we get? Delver of Secrets. Not enough.
Yeah.
We've got 1 turn of chump blocks, and then it's going to be over.
Might even be 0 if Tim has any kind of removal spell in his hand.
Lightning Bolt. Well, Ren and 6 can take out the Snapcaster. We're done.
Yeah, Red and 6 takes out a Snapcaster, and then.
Yeah, let's pack it up. You found the line.
Mm.
We got a 5/5 and a fat coming in. That's game. All right. That's round 1 here. Going to go to Tim Chan over Nick Beekert.